Hello! So today I am back with a new type of video. As you can see from the title, I am doing a K-pop album collection tour, and I've recently been super into this type of content and seeing how everyone else collects and displays their albums. I also do a bunch of unboxings, so I thought that it might be nice to show you all where those albums end up afterwards. A couple of notes before we get into it. As you can kind of see from this shot, my collection is quite large. I'm a multi-stan and have been collecting for about 6 years now. I've also always loved having physical copies of CDs, so that's part of why I have so many. So my general rule for buying a physical copy is that I have to really like at least half of the songs, and I also typically only buy one version of each album, but there are some exceptions to that. We'll get into that later though. So anyway, let's get into my collection. Right, so to start with the shelf that y'all see the side of when I do my reaction videos, on the very top shelf we have my Blackpink album collection, and right away we have discovered which group breaks the only one version of an album rule. So Blackpink is the one group that I will collect for, and to me, collecting is buying every version of every album. And the reason I do it for Blackpink is because in this very expensive hobby of album collecting, it's relatively cheap to collect for Blackpink because they never really have comebacks. So there's that. But yes, as you can see, I have both versions of Square Up on the very left, Jennie's solo album, Kill This Love, the How You Like That single album, all 4 versions of the album, as well as a Jisoo signed copy here in the middle, and then Rosé's single album, her vinyl version. You probably can't really see it because it's a little bit tucked in the back, but right next to that is the show live CD, and then both versions of Lisa's album as well as the vinyl, and I have them lined up from oldest to most recent, and that's how pretty much all of my albums are ordered. I know some people like to line them up by size because it looks better that way, but I just like to keep them in the order in which they were released. So yeah, there's that. Alright, so directly under my Blackpink shelf is my JYP shelf. There is one group missing from here, but obviously there is not enough space to fit all of their albums with all of these, so they are somewhere else. We'll get into them later, but as you can see, I have Stray Kids, ITZY, and Day6 on this shelf, and my iPhone boxes are holding up my Day6 albums so that they don't fall over. It's not very aesthetic, but I needed something and that just happened to work. If you look at my Stray Kids collection, you will notice that I do have multiple versions of some albums. I have 2 copies of I Am Not. I think that's both versions, not sure. But yes, I have the blue and the purple version because I originally had the purple version and all of my photo cards were of Woojin for some reason. It just happened that way. But I don't really want those personally, so I am trying to get rid of those somehow, but I couldn't bear to part with the photo book because it was one of my first Stray Kids albums, so I didn't want to try and sell that as well. But I ended up buying the other version of the CD in hopes that I would not end up with any Woojin photo cards, and I did not, so that's why I have both of those. And then I have the limited and both standard versions of Noisy because I originally bought the limited version and then Sub-K did the fan call thing with Stray Kids, and I for some reason thought that I might be able to get picked by buying 2 albums and doing the free entry, so that's why I have some extras of Noisy. And then obviously Stray Kids are having a comeback next month, or it will be this month by the time this video gets posted, but they're actually kind of the reason that I wanted to do this video, because once I get those albums I am going to have to move pretty much my whole collection around because I may or may not have unintentionally purchased all 3 copies of Ordinary, even though I was only trying to get the limited version. It's a long story, so I will spare you, but yeah, it's not gonna fit on this shelf with ITZY and Day6, and ITZY and Day6 are gonna have to move somewhere else. But we'll figure that out later. Moving on to ITZY, my collection for them is quite small. If you've watched any of my ITZY reaction videos, you would know that their music is very hit or miss for me, and I typically don't really enjoy their B-sides. I will usually just buy their title tracks on iTunes because I can't bear to listen to the B-sides more than once. However, Guess Who, Mafia in the Morning's album was such an anomaly. I loved that album so much, so that is my first ever physical ITZY album. And then I ended up actually really enjoying Crazy in Love. After a few listens, the first time I didn't like it, but it very quickly grew on me. So I have Yuna's version of the album. My mom picked that because she got it for me, because my mom fuels my collection. She likes K-pop as well, so she doesn't mind getting me some albums for birthday and Christmas presents, and that's also part of why this collection is humongous. That is my ITZY collection. It will probably grow as well because I have really been getting into them and really been liking their music lately, so we shall see. And then obviously we have my iPhone boxes holding up my Day6 album collection. So I have every album that they've ever released, and you can kind of see it. The single album, The Young K's, is here. I don't have ONEPIZ yet because I'm probably gonna get that as a birthday present, so it's not like I didn't like the album. I do, I just don't have it yet. I love Day6. They are not going to be releasing anything anytime soon after ONEPIZ's solo album, obviously, because he's enlisting very soon. Anything special from this shelf would probably have to be, I have 3 signed Day6 albums and they were all right in a row. So first I have Shoot Me, signed by all of the members. It's a little hard to see. Girl, why aren't you focusing? Yeah, there we go. So I got this from M-Wave when they did the meet and greet thingy that you can get signed albums from sometimes. And then Remember Us Youth Part 2 is also signed by all of them. Again, it's a little bit hard to see, but ONEPIZ here, Young K's is here, Dawn's here, Jay, and then Sungjin's is right at the very top. And then this was also from M-Wave's meet and greet thing. And then the last one that I have signed is incredibly hard to see, but it's the Book of Us Gravity. This came as part of the P1 benefit for their last tour in 2019 when I saw them in Boston. Yeah, you like really can't see their signatures at all because this is so dark, but they are all there, trust me. But yeah, so I have 3 signed albums from Day6 right in a row, which I treasure those greatly. Once my new Stray Kids albums get here, my ITZY and Day6 albums are gonna have to move somewhere else, and we're gonna have to figure that out later. So I will probably be doing a rearrange with me a little bit later. Alright, so underneath my JYP shelf is my Monsta X, Wano, and 17 shelf. This was just my Monsta X shelf, but then obviously Wano had to leave the group in 2019 and he started releasing music as a solo artist, so his albums are directly next to Monsta X's. I don't have his single album yet because that's probably also going to be a birthday present situation, so I will get it later, but it's just not here right now. And then I decided to put 17 next to them because 17 and Monsta X are friends, so I figured why not put them on the same shelf together. My 17 collection is quite small. I do have some more than one copy situations for them, so that really started happening with Your Choice. I have one side and other side. I'm forgetting at the moment which one I got the Target exclusive version and which one is the Korean version, but that's why I have 2 of those. And then you can't really see it because they're a little bit tucked behind, but I do have 2 versions of the Attacca Carrot version. I originally only bought Mingyu's, which is the first one here, And if you've watched that, thank you so much. That is like my most popular unboxing video, and I never expected any of my videos, frankly, to get that many views. So thank you for that. And if you have watched that, you would have seen that I put all of the photo cards in the photo card binder that came with it, but don't worry, I have taken them out. They were in there for about a month and they were fine. They were not damaged or anything by the plastic, but I watched a whole lot of unboxings of those and saw a lot of people freaking out over the type of plastic they were, so don't worry, my photo cards are fine. I also ended up deciding too late that I wanted more members versions. I do have like 8 biases in 17, so that's a bit much, but yeah, so I wanted Wanu and Josh's version, but Josh's was sold out everywhere that you could pick which version you were getting, and Wanu's I found on one site, but a few days after I ordered it, they emailed me and were like, hi, we actually don't have his version anymore, it's sold out, but we have these other members, so you can switch to one of them, or you can pick a different album that's the same price. So I ended up buying Dino's, because he is one of my biases, and he was one of the versions that they had left. So that's how I ended up with those. I'm still sad that I do not have Josh or Wanu's, because their pictures were just so freaking good, especially Josh with that shirtless photo card. Anyway, there are like a little bit of repeats for Monsta X, I would say. Their most recent Korean release, No Limit. Here I have 2 versions because my mom loves Monsta X and she buys all of my Monsta X CDs pretty much. She loves them so freaking much. She's the biggest Hyungwon stan like ever. But yeah, so she buys all their albums for me, and I wanted her to get some albums on my account on Subk so that I could get the points, and I had her buy No Limit there, but I had previously sent her the link to another shop with No Limit in it, and even after she bought the albums from Subk, I sent her a new email without No Limit in it, and she still ended up buying it for some reason. I don't know, but I have 2 copies of that, and I'm not sure there's any other repeats on this shelf at all besides the 2 Attakas and Your Choice and No Limit. But my prized possession on this shelf is Monsta X, the Connect Deja Vu album, which is here. This is also one of the M-Wave meet and greet signed albums. I am 99% sure that this is Wano's signature, so I will cherish this album forever because Wano was, whatever you want to call it, my bias in Monsta X, and obviously he left, so this is my prized possession. I will never be getting rid of this. So yeah, that is my only signed thing by Monsta X, but again, we'll cherish it forever, absolutely. And then there are some little things, whoops, up top here. Oh, this was a concert ticket for a show of theirs that I did not get to go to because I got sick before it happened. But my mom will also buy me like little Monsta X things that are like fan made or whatever. So this is like a sticker kind of thing to put on a car, I guess, I don't know. And then there are some Wano buttons that people made. I have 2 of these. If it would ever focus, that would be nice. There we go. Yeah, I have 2 of these, and then this is the other that I just threw on the ground. Sorry, Wano. But there's also this one, if that would ever focus. Dun, dun, dun. Come on, bestie, you can do it. Yeah, there we go. So I have 2 of these and 2 of the other one. She just bought those for me because she knows that he's my favorite. But they just kind of sit on the top there because I don't really know where else to put them. Again, not very aesthetic, but that is the situation. And then I just have a cup with a J on it holding them up because I needed something to keep them standing, basically. So there's that shelf. So underneath my Monsta X, Wano, and 17 shelf is kind of my everybody else shelf, I guess. Originally, when my collection was a lot smaller, this was my smaller label shelf, like not in the big three, but obviously Big Hit / Hive has overtaken YG and is now one of the big three. So not really a small label shelf, but that's what it was initially when I started collecting albums. So yes, starting from the far side over here, I have 2 of Eric Nam's albums. I will be getting his most recent album, There and Back Again, when it comes out, but it doesn't get released until April 1st, I think, but I'm very excited to get that. And then right next to him, I have 2 of Chaga's albums. I have Flourishing and Querencia. And then right next to her, I have 4 of Woods' albums. And my most recent one of his, or his most recent album, I guess. Oh my god, all my albums just fell over. But the most recent one, I got this from the M-Wave meet and greet thing again. It was a lot more expensive than I remember the other ones that I have were. This was like $64 roughly. Most of that was the shipping. But yeah, so I got a signed copy of Only Lovers Left, and I love it. It was a little Christmas present to myself, and now I gotta put it back because it made all my other albums fall over. Love that for me. Alright, it kind of messed up how they were set up, but that's fine, we'll fix that later. But yes, so right next to Woods, obviously we have all of ATEEZ's albums, for the most part, I think. I might be missing one, I don't know. And then I have 3 of TXT's albums. As I said in my album ranking video for 2021, have really recently gotten into TXT a lot and really love them. So I am planning on getting their debut album and Blue Hours mini album, which I don't have at the moment. For some reason, I don't know why, but obviously once I get Eric Nam's new album and also get those 2 TXT albums, I am going to need to rearrange this whole shelf, and honestly, I kind of want to move the solo artists onto the shelf that my camera is actually sitting on right now, which has a bunch of other solo albums. But also, I have recently realized that I don't really vibe with ATEEZ's music anymore, and I don't really care so much about them anymore. They were like one of my faves for a long time, but just recently I've kind of realized, I don't really care for their music anymore. So I am probably going to start listing my albums, my ATEEZ albums, on my Depop account. I do have some other albums on there already that I'm trying to get rid of, as well as those Woojin photo cards that I mentioned previously. They are not, the ATEEZ albums are not on Depop yet, but probably in the coming weeks they will be. I just haven't decided which ones I want to keep, if any. So if you are looking for very, 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 very gently used K-pop albums, the CD has only been used one time, and obviously I've looked through the photo book and touched the photo cards like one time. But yeah, if you're looking for very gently used K-pop albums, maybe check out my Depop. I try to sell them fully intact with all the inclusions and everything, so yeah. We'll have to see how many of these I keep or not, but this shelf is probably going to change quite a bit in the coming weeks. So right underneath my everybody else shelf, these are not albums, actually. I know I'm really only doing an album collection, but they are on the bottom. So this is my like non-CD merch. It's a lot of tour DVDs. I have G-Dragons over on the far left, the red and white splatter. I have Monsta X's 2018 or 2017 season greetings, Monsta X's tour DVD, Blackpink's tour DVD, both of Blackpink's Summer Diaries, the Hawaii one and the Seoul one, Blackpink's 2021 season's greetings, Stray Kids 2021 season greetings, Stray Kids District 9 World Tour DVD, the Going 17 magazine, the album photo book limited edition thing from last year, and Blackpink's Summer Diary from 2021. And then I have a little scrapbook kind of thing of K-pop concert tickets and confetti from the shows and anything else. And then I have the backpacks, the string backpack and the tote bag of Blackpink's that I got at their 2019 tour as VIP. So I know those aren't albums, but they are on the very bottom of my shelf. So there is that. Alright, so now we have moved on to the top shelf of the bookshelf across from the one that I just showed you everything on. And this is the one that y'all never see because it's not in my videos, obviously. But right on top we have what you could say is an SM shelf, but I would call it my NCT shelf, pretty much, because that's almost exclusively who's on here. Obviously we have Super M here and here. But you know what? They're like basically an NCT unit at this point with how many NCT members they have. And then obviously I have Jonghyun's album here holding up everything basically. That is the only one that's like not in order of like when it got released. It would be like somewhere over here, but I'd like to keep all the NCT albums together. So there's that. I have the albums ordered in how they came out, with NCT Dream, NCT 127, Wavy, and all of the full NCT albums, all, you know, like mixed up, I guess. But that's just the order that they came out chronologically. I'm not going to keep all of NCT Dream's albums together, 127's albums together, Wavy's, you know, etc. I'm just going to keep them all mixed up just because that's how they came out with how the NCT project works. So that's how that is set up. I do have a red velvet little Polaroid here. My friend Shavana, who I've done videos with before, she gave it to me as a gift with my Day 6 Sunrise album, and I just put it there because they are obviously on SM as well. Over here on this corner, obviously, I have my picture of Lucas from Super M, which is signed. It came with 2 other pictures that are right here, but they are not signed, just this one is. So I framed this one, and as a joke I was going to put it next to my NCT Dream poster that I have, because he joked that he wanted to be in NCT Dream, but I decided against it because it probably would have gotten covered by all this crap that I have on my floor in my room. So he is kind of holding all of my albums up a little bit. I'm definitely going to need a second shelf for NCT very soon, I think. Very soon. That picture is not going to fit on that shelf, I think. So that's tragic. Gonna have to move a lot of my shelves around, I guess. So underneath my NCT shelf is one that is one of my most empty shelves, I would say, and this is like my YG Men shelf, I guess. So if you didn't know, Big Bang was actually the first K-pop group that I got into in 2016 when I dove into K-pop. So I have a few of their albums. I have GD and Taeyang's solo albums. Taeyang was actually the very first K-pop artist to really get me into it, but Big Bang was the first group. So I have their albums, and I don't exactly remember why I have both copies of G-Dragon's One of a Kind album. I think when one of my family members was trying to buy the gold version for me, because that's the one I wanted, for some reason it came with a CD that was not actually G-Dragon. It was like some other random artist, I don't know who it was, and they ended up having to buy the other version, which actually had GD's CD. So I think that's why I have both of them. I'm not exactly sure. But yes, so I have Big Bang. This, I think, this was my first ever K-pop album, so that's a little special. I know a lot of people don't really like Big Bang, and they're like, whatever, I don't know, canceled, I guess. But this is the truth. They were my first group and this was my first ever K-pop album, so there's that. Put that back. And then in the middle, I have Mino of Winner's solo album. It was his first solo album, XX. And then I have Treasure's single albums from their debut and their first album. Again, they just released an album. I don't have it yet, but I am planning on getting it. So there's that. But then there's just kind of nothing else on this shelf because YG groups, again, they don't really release music, and obviously Big Bang are not releasing anything physical, at least, anytime soon, because they've all been doing their military enlistments and whatnot. When I do my big rearrange, I might move Big Bang and maybe some other groups that aren't releasing very often to a whole other set of shelves that I'm probably gonna have to get, but we'll see. So underneath my YG Men shelf is my GOT7 shelf, and this is one that I will probably most likely not be adding to anytime soon because obviously all of the GOT7 members are doing their solo stuff right now and they are all over the world at this point. So yeah, GOT7, obviously I love them. They were my second group that I ever got into, and this is the one shelf where the albums are not lined up oldest to most recent. It's the other way around, so it's oldest on the right and most recent on the very left. And their solo albums are not on this shelf. They are on the next one that I'm going to show you, just because I wanted to display the little light stick from Sub K, I guess, that I got when I saw them the first time in 2018, and the banners that I had from their concerts, and obviously their light stick. And then there's a little string backpack from their 2019 tour that I also have, but I don't want to pull it out and mess everything up. But yes, some of these albums are a little bit sun damaged, and that is why normally I keep the curtain closed, except for right now and for when I film reaction videos. And I didn't realize how badly some of these were sun damaged until I like moved these guys over here, because they were on my JYP shelf originally on the other side. So like this album, verse 2, is very yellow on the side. You probably can't see it, but I'm like embarrassed about it, so yikes. I do have some repeat copies of their albums. So for their most recent last album on JYP anyway, I have JB and Yugyeom's version of like the covers and everything. One of them was the US version and one is the Korean version. And then I have 2 copies of Eyes on You here in the middle, and I originally only wanted the black version here, but M-Wave was doing the signed copies of this, and I think the yellow one is the one that I have signed. Yes, it is. So this was my first ever signed album, I believe, and it is, I think, Jackson's signature. It took me a hot second to figure out who it was, but I think I posted it on Tumblr and people were like, that's Jackson's, so there's that. But yeah, I could not bear to part with the black version of the album because that was the one that I really wanted, but this is the one that's signed, so I kept both of them. But yeah, that's my only signed thing from GOT7, and I will cherish it forever. Where does this go? Right here. Okay. But yeah, when I do my album rearrange, I'm probably going to move these away from the window. I don't have a good way to display these where they're not going to be somewhere in the sunlight, so that's unfortunate, but we'll just have to see. But yeah, I have pretty much everything. They're all kind of falling over, but anyway. So yeah, there's my GOT7 shelf. Love them so much and I miss them every day. And then my very last shelf, which is quite arguably the emptiest, is my like solo artist shelf, I guess. So what I have here. First is Jackson of GOT7's Mirrors vinyl, and when I bought this, I thought it was actually signed, but this is just like printed on. So that's fun. But that was the start of this shelf, I guess. It was up with all of my GOT7 stuff, but then once all the GOT7 members started doing solo albums, I figured I should just probably put those together. So right next to that I have the blue version of Bem Bem's debut album, Ribbon, and then Yugyeom's Point of View U album, JB's Somofum album. I am pissed that you had to rip it to open it, and I'm glad that I did not do an unboxing for that, because having to rip that was like the most painful thing ever. Like, who decided that you have to rip open an album? I want to fight. And I, yes, did in fact keep the part that I had to rip off. And then I have his Def Love EP, and then Somi's the first album, XOXO, right next to it, and Alexa's Tattoo single album that I just recently posted an unboxing for, so if you haven't seen that, go watch it. But yeah, I think this shelf I'm probably going to move Eric Nam, Chang'e, and Woods over to, because they are solo artists as well. But yeah, that is my solo artist shelf. I do have another shelf right below this one, but there's nothing of importance on it, and that will probably get filled in later when I move everything around. So that was my K-pop album collection as of February 28th when I'm filming this. It is definitely going to be changing quite a bit very soon. As I said a few times, I'm going to be doing an album rearrange video in the near future, so stay tuned for that. It will either be coming sometime in April or June. I just haven't quite decided yet on when I'd like to tackle moving everything around, but we will cross that bridge when we get to it. And again, if you or anybody you know are looking for very gently used albums, I do have quite a few listed on my Depop, and will probably be listing more in the coming weeks. So that is all for this video, and I will see you in my next one.